Hi, everybody. Today I wanted to go over the assignment on why Reconstruction failed and just talk to you a little bit about it. So I know in one of the other assignments that one of the videos we watched, one of the historians said that we should not consider the time period of Reconstruction a failure. So when we talk about the failure of Reconstruction, what we're talking about is that all of the gains that African Americans had made right after the Civil War during that time period of Reconstruction, where they could vote and they were participating at a very high level in government, in politics. So they were being elected to Congress, they were in state and local governments, they were making laws and decisions, that all of those advancements went away. That's what we talk about when we're talking about the failure of Reconstruction. So, yes, they made a lot of gains. Yes, those gains did have some permanent impacts, but most of those practical things actually went away. And we want to know kind of why and why it took so long for African Americans to fight back to get a lot of those rights back. So the first thing you're going to do is click on this link to make a copy of the worksheet. And it will, oh, sorry about that, it'll look like this. So why Reconstruction failed, and you have four different things that you're going to be looking at that played a part in why all of those gains for African Americans went away. The first thing you're going to look at is a timeline. So you're going to go through this timeline and then answer the questions that are on the worksheet. I want you to see one pattern that you can see as you go through this timeline is that when the North makes a advancement, they do something to help African Americans, like the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. And remember from our Reconstruction Nearpod that um, Reconstruction activity, that the states, in order to get back into the southern states, in order to get back into the Union, they had to ratify the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. Well, then the southern states immediately enact these black codes, which restricted the rights of African Americans and basically tried to make them slaves again. So you can see that as the North does something, then the South usually reacts, trying to limit it or take it away if possible. Okay, so then the next thing after the timeline is you're going to watch a video and read a little bit about the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. So you are going to look at how that founded and why and what its effect was. So the KKK, if you've heard of them before, a very racist organization that was founded right after the Civil War and during the Reconstruction era to try to intimidate African Americans to make them not take advantage of the rights that they had gained. And they used violence to do so. The KKK pretty much almost went away in the late 1800s. And then it had a resurgence during the time of the civil rights movement when African Americans were again fighting for their full rights. Okay, the next thing is going to be about those black codes that we mentioned in the timeline. So on this, there are two different things that you need to look at for the black codes. The first is it has a very quick description of what black codes and pig laws were, and then you want to watch this video that talks about the black codes. And then you're actually going to look at some black codes. So you're going to need to look through those in order to be able to answer the questions about them. So if we go down here, we will see you're going to be able to answer from the video and the short description, what was the purpose of them. And then once you get down to questions 2 through 6, you're going to have to actually look at the black codes provided and find what the consequences would be, what those laws tried to, how they punished black people for just doing basic, living activities. Okay, the last thing you're going to look at is, so the black codes were eventually found unconstitutional, and the North was able to force the South to get rid of them. But then they responded by passing Jim Crow laws. So they said, fine, if we can't make African Americans completely like slaves, then we are going to separate them from whites. The Jim Crow laws are the beginning of segregation in our country. Um, so the activity for the Jim Crow laws are a little bit different. So you're going to go to the website that actually has actual laws that were all over the country from the 1880s to the 1960s. Um, and these were laws that were in the country. But instead of just answering questions about them, you are going to have a situation. So, for instance, in this first situation, you have an African American family is traveling to visit family in Chicago. They're running late, so they sit in the first seat they can find on the train. So, the instructions are for each situation, explain how the person is breaking the law, and then what the people would have to do to be in compliance with the law. That means they would not be breaking the law anymore. So you are going to have to go to the Jim Crow laws. So we know that one's about a train, right? So you can see that each of these laws is, it has a heading of what it deals with. So we're going to go down and try to find transportation or trains, railroads. Here we go. So on here it says that the conductor of the passenger train is required and authorized to assign each passenger to the car or the division of the car that's designated for the race. So if we go back to our situation, we would see that they can't just sit in the first seat they find on the train. They have to sit in the black section. So the law they're breaking, they did not sit where assigned, or they didn't get an assignment for the conductor. The fix would be they have to sit in the black section. They have to be shown where that is by the conductor. That is how you would do all of these Jim Crow law situations. Um, so as you're going through all of these, I want you guys to see that a big reason why African Americans lost all those gains is that the North lost the political will to keep forcing the South to make African Americans equal, to give them equal rights. And as the North stopped enforcing that through the army, through political means, the South, who many people in the South they had been slave owners. They did not think that African Americans were equal. You cannot flip a switch in people's head and suddenly make them not racist. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And so as the South got more freedom and the whites in the South were not being forced to make sure that all of these equal rights laws were being enforced, they started forming violent groups. They started passing laws that would take away African American people's rights. And that is why African Americans lost all of those gains they had made during that 10-year period of Reconstruction after the Civil War.